All right, welcome into SportsBit Betting Insight today, Friday, April 22nd, weekend edition on SBRpicks.com. No deep dive today. A big game breakdown. We're going to go through a ton of games, one baseball, and a lot of NBA playoff games. Play of the day coming up. Try to make it 2 in a row there. You've accomplished something, and you're a legend when you're a musician and you lead with SportsCenter when you pass away. The sad news yesterday with Prince at the age of 57. I'm from Minnesota. He's from Minnesota. We both like basketball. The similarities end there. But one Prince story. I've interviewed Mike Tyson about 5 times, but it's been a while since I've talked to Tyson. But in his book, and if you saw the epic skit on the Chappelle Show with Charlie Murphy, Tyson talked about that in his book. That is a true story. When Prince goes over to Eddie Murphy's house and he's got high heels on, he goes, "Hey guys, how about a game of basketball?" And he kicks their ass, and it's raining jumpers and threes, and then Prince makes some pancakes after he buries them. The skit was hilarious. I couldn't believe when it was confirmed by Tyson, who was apparently there, that the story was true. The guy loved basketball, a tough loss, and, not to mention, played the best Super Bowl halftime performance ever.
And it's funny you bring up that Super Bowl halftime performance, Paulie. I'll tell you what I was doing at halftime of that Super Bowl. Of course, that was Colts-Bears. And I was in a 50-dime contest. You know, winner gets 50 dimes. And it was at halftime, and I was up against one player, and I was trying to figure out how to hedge. I had a hedge side, I had a hedge total. Ooh. So anyhow, I paid no attention to halftime. I don't think I had the volume on at halftime. So I hedged. I lost my hedge bet, and then the sportsbook went out of business the next day, and nobody got paid. And so I had to pay the hedge bet. Lenny from Cascade, You still owe me something, buddy. Someday I'm going to run into you, and I look forward to that day.
No.
Let me ask you this. You say you have nothing in common. You said you and Prince are from Minnesota, and you both like basketball. That's all you have in common?
That's it.
Hello, you look alike, you sing alike. Let me hear you sing it. I just want your extra time and your kiss.
There it is. Yes, let's get the greatest hits album. Run on by it. Hey, that should have made the Bad Beats segment. You got to be kidding me. The place goes out of business the next day. That's brutal.
Yeah, it was pretty rough.
I didn't know that story. All right.
Yeah, it's not a story that I cared to recount. But I didn't see the halftime show that everyone says is the best halftime show ever. So.
Oh, it was something. It was dynamite. All right. No bad beats today, but a lot of bad bets. And how about this? They were betting the Reds last night. Arrieta throws the no-no.
Yeah, and that's one where you're not just wrong on one side. You're wrong on both sides because not only did Arrieta throw a no-no, the Cubs scored 16 runs, and the Reds hit 6 balls out of the infield all game. Jay Bruce, quote, "We got dominated. That's the most dominating game I've ever been a part of. He was great. We weren't. Every time he goes out there, he's got no-hit stuff. He's arguably the best pitcher in the game today." And, of course, the 16-run margin, well, the largest margin in a no-hitter ever, yeah, that was Buffalo beating Detroit 18-0 back in 1884. Worth noting, if you watch the game, if you watch the highlights, this is something we've talked about here on SportsBit more than once. Look at all the Cubs fans in that crowd. Chicago is drawing so well on the road, and the Cubs fans were standing and cheering at Cincinnati's home park.
Some staggering numbers on Arrieta. Last 24 regular season starts, he's 20-1 with a 0.86 ERA, 2 no-hitters, and in 14 of those starts, he didn't allow a run. His last 11 starts, 10-0 with a 0.52 and 2 no-hitters. I mean, this is ridiculous. Last week, he was minus 350 at home. And now I'm just going to be, he might be $4 here in a month against some of these bad teams in Wrigley.
Well, that's the point. He's supposed to be that big of a favorite right now. And again, you say, oh, it's a square bet. It's a square bet. The wise guys are betting the other side. Guess what? It's the right side. Arrieta's the most dominant pitcher, and the Cubs are the best team in baseball. I don't see the rationale behind fading Chicago. We've seen a lot of anti-Chicago money from the wise guys already this year.
Yep. A couple of bad bets in the NBA. Let's start with the Pacers. Blown out at home.
Yeah, and that one, Pacers took heavy money in that game. They were plus 1.5 and bet down or bet up to -1. So the switch of favorites before tip-off in that one. Indiana took the money. Toronto pretty much dominated wire to wire.
Thunder and the Mavs under. That was a game. Every commercial break, you're betting the over and in-game.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and think about it. This is something that we really never see. And when I say never, I mean never. The game one total in that series, Thunder, Mavs, was bet up as high as 210. The game three total, we're not talking about 6 weeks later and both teams have changed their styles. We're talking about 2 games later, total sitting at 197.5. Same 2 teams, same lineup, same rosters, a total moving 12.5 points in 2 games in an NBA playoff series is very rare. Of course, for game number 3, the first number, the game 1 number was right, not the game 3 number.
Hey, Teddy, NBA playoffs, favorite 16-3 straight up.
Yeah, if you're betting the favorites on the money line, you're doing just fine. The 3 losses, we saw Toronto lose game 1. Game 2 was Oklahoma City losing at home. And game 3 was the Golden State Warriors losing to the Rockets.
A big win for the books because you had all these aces that were going yesterday and laying big prices. So people were betting these aces with the parlays. Scherzer and the Nationals blew up. He was bet as high as $2 with the news with some guys were out with the Marlins. And even Price, the Red Sox give him a 5-1 lead. He couldn't hold that.
Yeah, I mean, Washington bet up from minus 165 to minus $2. The lineups came out, and Stanton and D. Gordon were out. And then, of course, 4 batters into the game, Scherzer and the Nats are down 3-1, and it was game over. You missed the top of the first inning, guess what? You missed the whole game in that one. And, of course, Max Scherzer, only 7 swings and misses against the Marlins. That's his fewest in a game over the last 5 seasons. Something to think about, perhaps. Moving forward. You talk about the Red Sox giving David Price that lead. They gave him a 5-1 lead in the first. That being said, he was taking his glove off for good by the top of the 4th. Rocked for 8 runs and a couple of dingers. Boston scored 8. That wasn't enough. What about Keuchel? He got bet up as well for the Astros in last night's game. And another game that was, first inning, pretty much over. Gave up 13 hits. The Astros were down 3-1 in the first. Never really in the game.
Yep. All right. Big game breakdown coming up next. We'll get to one Major League Baseball game, and then the rest are going to be the NBA playoffs on SportsBit. Betting Insight today.
Visit SBRUFC.com to find the best odds and sportsbook bonuses available for UFC 197.
Time for big game breakdown. Let's start Major League Baseball. The Cardinals on the road to take on the Padres. Cardinals $1.30, 7.5 the total. Wainwright against Cashner. It says Wainwright on the back of the uniform, but these are not Wainwright pitches being thrown here, Teddy. He's off to a rough start.
Yeah, rough is not the right word. I mean, every stat that you can measure is way, way off from Wainwright compared to his career numbers, and they're all in the wrong direction. Look at the numbers right here on the graph. His career strikeouts per 9, it's about half of that this year. His walks per 9 inning, he's twice that this year. His ground ball rate is down. His swinging strike percentage is down. His stuff is not fooling hitters. You're not getting the swing and misses that he got on a pretty consistent basis for most of his career. And you look at the quote. This is not an inspiring quote. I'm so far from where I can be and where I want to be. It's very, very frustrating. I'm so upset about the way the ball is coming out right now. Fact of the matter is, I'm struggling right now. There's no other way to put it. Oh, by the way, he's chalked tonight in San Diego.
Yeah, how about that? And Cashner getting his stuff back since he had the injury in 2014. You look at this graphic, strikeouts per 9 innings, 2014, 6.8, 2015, 8.0, and this year, 9.0. Although, what happened last night, Teddy? Pods got roughed up.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about San Diego as a bad bet last night at the top of the show. Of course, there was one game in which the betting market to right the money poured in on Pittsburgh in that one against the Padres. And, you lose 11-1 last night. We saw, they're certainly facing a better lineup than the one they faced last night tonight, which has to be something of concern. But Cashner, he's in good form. Wainwright is not.
To the NBA playoffs, the Cavs on the road to take on the Pistons. Cleveland 4.5. 200.5 the total. Experience matters. The Pistons have been blowing leads and they've been folding down the stretch. You look at this graphic so far. First half, the Pistons have outscored Cleveland 111-108. Second half, they've been outscored 105-80. And what doesn't help is Drummond missing all these free throws as he's 4 of 16 from the line, Teddy.
Yeah, 25% from the charity stripe's not going to cut it. And, of course, at that rate, it's going to encourage your opponent to play a little hack a Drummond, which Cleveland hasn't needed to do because they've had the lead in the fourth quarter in each of the two games thanks to some of those rough second halves from Detroit. And the realities are pretty clear so far in this series. You know, the new-look Pistons, they're not far along enough to guard the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs scoring at 117.5 points per 100 possessions. They've had 3 players score more than 20 points in each game. And, I mean, the Stan Van Gundy quote tells you exactly what's going on with Detroit's defense right now. Of course, the Cavs hit 23 pointers in game number 2. Quote, that's what happens with the great players. This is Stan Van Gundy. Anytime you delude yourself into thinking you've got the answer and you're a brilliant coach and you got this scenario, no. You're not locking these guys down. These guys don't have holes in their games. There is no answer. We have our plan, but those guys render plans useless so many times that you better be ready with plan A, plan B, plan C, and all the way down. In other words, what Van Gundy is saying, if we're going to beat the Cavs, we're going to have to outscore them. He's not convinced Detroit's D is going to be able to stop Cleveland, and I'm not convinced it will either.
Yeah, and you know, he'd like to put in a game plan. And he's got to have meetings with players after every game. Game 1, he had to talk to Reggie Jackson about getting the tee. Game 2, Stanley Johnson. I'm in LeBron's head. What series are you watching, buddy?
Hey, I like a rookie who's cocky. I'd rather have a rookie who's confident than a
right.
rookie that goes into a shell going up against a great player. That being said, you don't want to piss off LeBron.
No.
And he probably just did.
No. All right, Hawks and the Celtics from Boston, Game 3. Boston 3, 200.5 the total. Defense. That's been the key with the Hawks, and they have gone to the second half of the season and so far in this series, they have held the Celtics to 89.9 points per 100 possessions, 65 of 90 shooting, and what's more, 24 block shots, and they forced 11 steals. Great job by Atlanta so far.
Yeah, and I mean, we've told you before several times, again, here on Sportsbit, like we try to do every day. We try to give you valuable betting information. We're not always giving out picks on every game. We're trying to give you good information so you can make good decisions. Of course, we come in at the end of every show with the play of the day. But we told you before that the Hawks have been the best defense in the NBA since the All-Star break. You'll look at this picture, and you see, in this series, every player's got to look 8 feet tall for Boston. All of those block shots, all of those steals, and that miserable shooting. Look at the quote from Brad Stevens, right here on the screen. Quote, it never felt like we were at their level. Hey, we're going to have to figure that out. They're doing what they do. They fly around. They're very physical on your cuts. They went under a lot of things, made us make shots, and jammed the paint on our drives. Atlanta's defense isn't going away. I mean, not even maybe. Look at this. All right. Game number 2. Hawks starters, their front court starters, Paul Millsap and Kent Bazemore are combined 3 of 26 from the floor.
Wow.
And they still won wire to wire. They blew them out.
Yep.
You know, so when you got 2 starters that are just putting up brick after brick, and you're still winning by margin, it's certainly a good sign. And one other thing that we talked about on Sports earlier in the week, Pauly.
Korver.
Without Avery Bradley to defend him. Exactly. Kyle Korver. You saw what he did the other night.
Yep. With Game 1, he was 0 of 7 from 3 with Bradley on him. And then with no Bradley in Game 2, we got off to a hot start. And he was 5 of 7 from 3 in the Game 2 win. Is this the series, Teddy? Are we finally going to get a competitive series here in the NBA playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to like into the first round competitive series. Basically, it's this one or Indy-Toronto. Unless Charlotte comes up big, and even if Charlotte wins a game, I don't think that's going to go 6 or 7. You know, the markets are saying that Boston's supposed to bounce back here, and this has the chance to be a competitive series. Again, the Celtics are a team that at times this season we've been high on, but right now I think Atlanta's better. I'm not convinced there's going to be any Game 7s in the first round. Heck, the way it's going, there might not be a whole lot of Game 6s.
Yep. I'll agree with you there. 3 more games coming up and the play of the day on SportsBit. Betting insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Visit SBRUFC.com to find the best odds and sportsbook bonuses available for UFC 197.
All right, wrapping up the weekend preview edition on SportsBit. 3 more games. The Spurs and the Grizzlies from Memphis, San Antonio, 11.5, 181 the total. I got nothing for you. I mean, this is, you got an 18-point favorite at home and 11.5-point favorite on the road.
I mean, there really isn't a lot to talk about in this series. It doesn't matter how hard Zach Randolph and the limited Grizzlies try. This one is completely out of their reach, and it's been pretty obvious in the first two games. You know, the Grizz, 68 and 74 points scored. In 5 of the 8 quarters in this series, they've been held to 18 or less. They've only made 14 free throws in 2 games. You're not going to catch me betting this one over. I'll tell you that much. Memphis, again, you know, and this is another thing we've talked about on Sportsbet a couple of times this week. You know, the Grizzlies don't hit three-pointers. The only way to beat the Spurs is to hit three-pointers. San Antonio's two-point defense is dominant. And that leaves Memphis, you know, playing without their all-star center, playing without their all-star caliber point guard. They are what they are. You know what matters in this series, Pauly? Only one thing. How many minutes are the Spurs starters going to play?
Yeah, how about that? I mean, look at he's going to be, Popovich is going to be able to probably sweep Memphis, and the bench guys will get more minutes than the starters.
They have so far in the series. So far, the reserves, with slightly, they've played a total of 28 more seconds than the starters in the series. You know, and I wonder if Pops actually picks out one game to go harder and longer to keep his team in rhythm. Maybe he trusts them already. If he does pick out one game to go harder and longer, this would probably be it. But it's also worth noting, and we talk about the starters versus the bench in San Antonio, there isn't a team in the league with a deeper or better bench than the Spurs. And Pop spent all year developing that bench. That's how they covered all of those spreads as big chalk. Remember how good San Antonio was as double-digit chalk from the regular season? They beat all the really bad teams because when Pop emptied the bench, the Spurs continued to execute and build margins as opposed to blowing margins. I don't want Memphis. I don't want over. But, you know, you have to think there might be some better bargains than laying double digits in the NBA playoffs with a road favorite.
Doubt about that. All right, Heat and the Hornets. Game 3. Charlotte 2-2-0-1 the total. Charlotte's been unable to stop Wade, and the Heat, maybe they get some energy and do a better job defensively with that home crowd. No Batum for this one.
Yeah, and the Batum injury for Charlotte, that is meaningful. He had the best season of his career. He filled so many different roles. He was a great offensive shooter on the wing. He was a distributor, set a career high in assists. He was that secondary rebounder that Charlotte needed. He was a strong defender in terms of keeping his hands in the lanes and forcing steals. The Nicholas Batum injury, again, you know, this is not one that in my mind is being accurately valued by the betting markets. He may come back later in the series. He will not play in game number 3. But, you know, this is one. This is something that we had this graphic up earlier in the week. We got to put it up again because it matters. Miami in the series. Points per 100 possessions. 134.7. 134 points per 100 possessions. Now, the best offense in the NBA all year was Golden State. They scored 112 per possession, 112 and a half. The worst defense in the NBA this season, the Lakers, allowed 109. The Heat have been so much better than what you can expect for any team in any series. You just have to wonder, you know, maybe the best move for Steve Clifford, just keep your team calm and not make any move at all and let for Miami shots just naturally, you know, stop. The Heat can't be this hot forever, and they can't execute their offense as well as they have forever if Charlotte plays some defense.
Well, and they were not the same team on the road either. So that's something to watch for Saturday afternoon. Let's finish.
And of course, we've got we do have the Clifford quote here that I want to talk about. When you talk about what Charlotte's supposed to do on defense in this one differently. Quote, you can't overreact. You've got to stay disciplined to what you're doing. So Dragic made 3 threes against the under, and then all of a sudden we're overextending, we're opening up driving gaps, Winslow hits a couple of jumpers, and all of a sudden we're giving Wade room, Johnson room. You've got to stay with the game plan because otherwise that's when Wade really got going. We got spread out. You can't take everything away from them, but shooting is not their strength. So at least it sounds to me, at least a little bit, Clifford's got a plan in this one. Whether they can execute it or not, Clifford's got a plan.
Yep. Clippers, Blazers. Clippers laying 2 on the road, 207.5 the total. Here's the story of the series. Game 1, the Blazers couldn't get open shots. They couldn't score. Game 2, they got a lot of open looks. They couldn't make any of them. The Lillard graphic, we put that up. Staggering. 38 points in the series, 13 of 39 shooting, 3 of 13 from 3, 10 assists, 8 turnovers, and minus 26. They've been outscored by 26 points when he's on the floor. CP3 doing an excellent job so far on Lillard.
Yeah, and I mean the Blazers, less than 93 points per 100 possession in this series. We just talked about Miami with 134 per 100. Here's Portland at 92.9. You know, Doc Rivers is running traps at the pick and rolls. He's really done a good job of disrupting not just Lillard, C.J. McCollum as well. And Terry Stotts made some significant Game 2 adjustments, and they got easier shots. Here's a quote. I thought we did a good job of changing things up as far as getting different looks and moving people around. And Lillard agreed with what his coach said. Here's his quote. Quote, I got a lot more clean looks tonight. The ball didn't go in as much as I would have liked to, especially with us being in the game, but I think I would have had it going. It would have come down to the last couple of minutes, but they didn't. Might be a few more shots falling at home. And I got to come up with this stat, because this stat, I haven't seen it anywhere.
Okay.
I just tracked it down. Portland now 2-13-1 against the spread. 4-12 straight up in the postseason since going up 2-0 at Houston in the first round only 2 years ago, back in 2014. 2-13-1 against the spread. That's not just overvalued. That's way overvalued. And, of course, of the 4 straight-up wins they've had in the postseason, one came as a favorite in overtime. They didn't cover that one. And another one came by 1 point. Remember when Lillard hit that 3 at the buzzer in Game 6 against Houston?
Yep.
That's the 2 of the 4 wins were those 2 wins. They haven't had a whole lot of comfortable wins in the playoffs in any of the, since that 2-0 lead against Houston.
Hey, Doc Rivers is doing a good job so far, too.
Yeah, the Clippers are live. That's why we like L.A. going into the series, why we used the Clippers and laid that price. What was it, minus 360 with the Clips?
And there was heavy money came in on them, too. Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, now they're minus 3,000. Yeah. And I thought that there was a little bit of an overlay there on the Clips. And I continue to think that LA's going to give Golden State a series. I really think they will.
Well, let's check the status of Curry, too. All right, money time. Play of the day. Winner yesterday with the Royals. What are we doing, Teddy? People might think we're nuts on this one.
Well, this is one of those deals that we used this same play a couple nights ago. And it wasn't just wrong. It was dead wrong. It was over by halftime. When you believe in the process of what you're doing, when you believe in your handicap, and when you say, this team is not going to be scoring 134 points per 100 possessions throughout the entirety of the series, yeah, we're going right back to the well. Let's look at Miami and Charlotte under 201. That number's too high. This game is going to be played with a little bit of a different defensive mentality. And Miami, neither one of these teams wants to run. The reason the games have been so high scoring is simply offensive execution. I think it takes a step back here. Let's look for the Heat and the Bobcats to stay under 201.
All right, let's close it out with 2 in a row. Have a good weekend.
I call them the Bobcats. They're the Hornets.
What'd you say?
The Bobcats.
Hornets, yes. We got that. I missed that. All right, come on, clean that up. All right.
Clean it up.
Close it out with the 2-game winning streak. Have a good weekend. We're back Monday on SportsBit on SBRPicks.com.